The ice winds screamed across the frozen plains like wounded animals. Inside the deep glacier caves, the Krythax pack stood in complete silence. Their massive bodies formed a circle around three tiny shapes wrapped in frost grass. Matriarch Selen stood tallest among them. Her dark blue scales, which usually glowed with inner warmth, looked gray in the dim cave light. Her golden eyes stared down at the three bundles. 3 hatchlings. Born strong. Dead within their first week. We give their spirits to the eternal ice, Selen's voice rumbled through the cavern like distant thunder. As our ancestors did. As we have always done. As we will always do. The 23 adult dragons hummed together. The sound was so deep it made the ice walls vibrate. One by one each dragon touched their snout to the tiny bodies. Some of the touches were quick. Others lingered. A female named Korith stayed pressed against one bundle for a long moment. Her hatchling. Her first. Her only. 4 strong males lifted the bundles gently in their claws. They carried them toward the cave entrance where the wind waited like a hungry beast. The pack followed in a slow procession. 200 meters away, sitting in his heated research shelter, Dr. Kevin Walsh watched everything through his observation equipment. He had been stationed on this frozen moon for 6 weeks now. This was the 4th morning ceremony he had witnessed. For ceremonies. 12 dead hatchlings total. Kevin adjusted his thermal scanner and looked at the readings. The adult Krythax glowed bright orange and red on his screen. Their bodies generated impressive heat even in this brutal cold. But the juveniles, the young dragons still growing their adult scales, barely showed up warmer than the ice around them. Some of them registered at dangerous levels. Computer, what's the survival rate for Krythax hatchlings in this region over the past 20 years? Kevin asked. His AI assistant replied in a calm voice. Declining steadily, Dr. Walsh. 20 years ago, 73% of hatchlings survived to maturity. 10 years ago, 41%. Current 5-year average is 18%. Kevin felt his stomach turn. What about this specific pack? Matriarch Selen's pack has produced 47 eggs in the past 10 years. 7 hatchlings survived. 7 out of 47. Kevin closed his eyes. These weren't numbers. These were children. Baby dragons who never got a chance to grow up, to fly, to live. Through his viewing scope, Kevin watched the pack emerge onto a high ice ridge. The wind hit them immediately, but they spread their wings anyway. The morning flight was sacred to the Krythax. No matter how brutal the weather, they performed it. Selen launched first. Her massive wings caught the wind and she rose into the gray sky. One by one the others followed. They formed a circle in the air, flying around their territory in a pattern that had been repeated for thousands of years. Even in grief they were beautiful. Kevin had studied dozens of alien species across the galaxy during his career. He had never seen anything like the Krythax. They looked like the dragons from ancient Earth stories. Powerful, majestic, noble. And they were dying. Kevin looked at his climate data. The moon's axis had shifted slightly over the past few centuries. Just a small wobble in cosmic terms. But it meant the winters in this region were now 30% colder than they had been 1,000 years ago. The Krythax had evolved to handle extreme cold, but there were limits. Hatchlings needed a certain minimum temperature to develop properly. They were falling below that threshold. It's not sustainable, Kevin muttered. He pulled up population records that the Krythax had shared with the Xenobiology Council years ago. The numbers told a grim story. This pack once numbered over 100. Now 23. And every year the number dropped. Kevin made a decision. He started preparing his cold weather gear. The next morning, Kevin trudged through knee-deep snow toward the Krythax territory. His heated suit kept him alive, but every gust of wind found the gaps between panels. His face mask frosted over repeatedly. He had to stop twice to clear it. He found Matriarch Selen perched alone on an ice ridge overlooking the frozen valley. She sat perfectly still, like a statue carved from blue stone. Matriarch Selen, Kevin called out. His translator device picked up his words and converted them into the deep, resonant tones of Krythax speech. Selen's head turned slowly. Those golden eyes fixed on him. She did not look surprised. The human observer. You come close today. Closer than usual. I wanted to speak with you. About yesterday. About the hatchlings you lost. They have returned to the ice. There is nothing more to speak of. Kevin climbed carefully up the ridge. He kept a respectful distance from the massive dragon. Even sitting, she was 3 times his height. I've been studying your pack's data. The environmental readings. The temperature patterns. Matriarch, the cold is getting worse. The cold has always been here. We are Krythax. We are born to the ice. Yes, but the ice is changing. My instruments show that winter temperatures have dropped significantly over the past few centuries. Your species evolved for cold, but not this level of cold. Especially not for your young. Selen's scales rippled. A pattern Kevin had learned meant irritation or discomfort. The environment tests us. The strong survive. The weak fall. This is the way of all living things. Those 3 hatchlings yesterday, Kevin pressed gently. Were they weak? The silence stretched out. Kevin counted his own heartbeats. 20, 30, 40. Finally, Selen spoke. No, they were not weak. Their parents are among our finest. The strongest hunters. The eggs were perfect. Healthy. The hatchlings emerged vigorous and alert. Then their deaths weren't about weakness. They died because the temperature in your nesting caves is too cold for proper development. I've measured it. Your caves are staying at -40 degrees. Hatchlings need at least -20 to develop their thermal regulation properly. We have nested in these caves for 100 generations. And 100 generations ago the caves were warmer. The planet has changed, matriarch. Through no fault of yours. Selen turned her massive head away, looking out over the frozen wastes. You speak of things beyond your understanding, human. We have our ways. Our traditions. They have kept us alive for 10,000 cycles. Kevin pulled out his data pad. He called up the population records and held it where Selen could see. Your own records tell a different story. 10,000 cycles ago, your pack numbered 312. 5,000 cycles ago, 147. 1,000 cycles ago, 79. Today, 23. The strong packs claimed the warm valley territories. We chose the frozen heights. We knew it would be harder. We accepted that. But did you choose extinction? Kevin asked quietly. Because that's where this leads, matriarch. I've run the projections. If the trend continues, this pack will be gone within 2 generations. The Krythax as a species might disappear from these territories within 5 generations. Selen stood abruptly. Her full height was imposing. Her wings spread wide, blocking out the pale sun. The shadow fell across Kevin like a physical weight. Humans always believe they can fix everything. Selen's voice was hard now, angry. You travel the stars with your machines and your data and your solutions. You see a problem and you cannot resist trying to solve it. But we are not a broken machine, Dr. Walsh. We are Krythax. We have endured ice storms that would freeze your blood solid. We have survived avalanches that buried entire mountains. We do not need a human to save us. I'm not trying to save you, Kevin said, holding his ground even though his heart was pounding. I'm offering to help. There's a difference. We endure or we end. Both with honor. That is our way. Selen gathered herself to launch. And those 7 survivors from 47 eggs? Kevin called out. Do they think honor is worth more than their siblings' lives? Selen froze. For just a moment, something flickered in those golden eyes. Pain maybe. Doubt. But then her face hardened again. Leave us to our fate, human. It is not yours to change. She leaped from the ridge. Her wings caught the brutal wind and she soared away toward the caves. The downdraft nearly knocked Kevin off his feet. He stood alone on the ice as the sun started its early descent. The wind cut through his suit at every joint and seal. He was shivering despite the heating elements. Kevin looked toward the caves where the Krythax pack lived. Where they raised their young. Where too many of those young died before they ever learned to fly. His translator device was still active. It had picked up a sound Selen made as she flew away. The AI provided analysis, vocalization pattern consistent with Krythax's expression of grief. She was grieving. They all were. But their pride would not let them accept help. Their traditions demanded they endure alone or die with dignity. Kevin thought about the 3 tiny bundles from yesterday. About Korith pressing her snout against her dead hatchling. About the 40 other eggs that never became adult dragons. No, he said out loud to the empty ice. This isn't acceptable. He turned and started the long walk back to his research station. His mind was already working. Running calculations. Considering possibilities. Planning solutions. The Krythax might have accepted their fate. Kevin Walsh had not. Kevin returned to the ice ridge the next morning. And the morning after that. And the one after that. Each day he set up his portable observation station at a respectful distance from the Krythax caves. Each day he recorded temperatures, wind patterns, and thermal readings. Each day Matriarch Selen ignored him completely. But someone else was watching. On the 4th day, Kevin was checking his instruments when a shadow fell across his equipment. He looked up and found himself staring at a young Crythax. The dragon was smaller than the adults, maybe 2/3 their size. His scales were a lighter shade of blue with silver edges that caught the weak sunlight. "You are the persistent human," the dragon said. His voice was higher than Selen's, less rumbling. "The one my aunt keeps telling to leave." "Your aunt?" Kevin stood slowly, keeping his movements calm and non-threatening. "Matriarch Selen. I am Draen, son of her brother Kelric. He died in an ice storm 3 winters ago." The young dragon tilted his head, studying Kevin with bright copper-colored eyes. "You come every day. Why?" "I'm studying your pack. Trying to understand how you survive in these conditions." "We don't survive very well," Draen said bluntly. "In case you haven't noticed. We're dying slowly." Kevin was surprised by the directness. "You see it too?" "I'm young, not blind." Draen settled onto the ice, folding his wings. "I've watched 6 of my clutchmates die. Eggs that hatched strong. Hatchlings that should have lived. But the cold took them anyway. One by one." "I'm sorry," Kevin said quietly. "Sorry doesn't warm the nesting caves." Draen looked out over the frozen valley. "The elders say we must endure. That accepting help is weakness. That our ancestors survived, so we must find a way as well." He paused. "But our ancestors had warmer winters." Kevin pulled out his data pad. "You're right. Look at this." He showed Draen the climate records going back 1,000 years. "See this line? That's average winter temperature. And this line is population." Draen leaned closer, his large eyes studying the graphs. "They match. When the temperature drops, the population drops." "Exactly. Your pack isn't weak, Draen. The environment has changed. No amount of strength or willpower can change physics. Hatchlings need certain temperatures to develop. You're falling below that threshold." "I've tried to tell the elders this," Draen said with frustration in his voice. "But they say I'm too young to understand. That I haven't earned the right to question our ways." "How old are you?" 15 cycles. "Not yet fully mature. My opinion carries no weight in council." Kevin sat down on a rock, looking up at the young dragon. "Can I ask you something? Why do you stay here? In the frozen wastes? Your people have territories in warmer regions, don't they?" Draen's scales rippled with what looked like embarrassment. "We do. The valley packs. The coastal packs. They have easier lives. Better survival rates for their young." He paused. "We are the high ice pack. For 800 generations we have held these territories. To leave would be to admit defeat. To show weakness." "Who decided that? 800 generations ago?" "It's just known. It's tradition. The strong packs prove themselves in the harshest places." Kevin pulled up another file on his data pad. "Draen, I've been reading the historical records your people shared with the Xenobiology Council. The really old ones. Do you know what your pack did 4,000 years ago? Endured the ice? No. They migrated." Kevin showed him the data. "Look. Your ancestors spent the brutal winter months in lower elevations. They moved to thermal spring areas where the temperature stayed warmer. They raised their hatchlings there. Then, when the young were strong enough, they returned to the high ice for the rest of the year." Draen stared at the information. His copper eyes went wide. "But, we've always been told we never leave our territory. That we stay and endure no matter what. Someone changed that. Somewhere in your history, migration became viewed as weakness. Running away. So your people stopped doing it?" Kevin scrolled through more data. "The change happened about 2,000 years ago. I found records of a great council where the packs decided to establish permanent territories. To prove their strength by never retreating from their chosen lands. 2,000 years ago," Draen repeated slowly. "That's when the population started its steepest decline." "Yes." The young dragon sat in silence for a long moment. The wind howled around them. Finally he spoke. "Why do you keep coming here, human? My aunt has told you to leave. The pack wants nothing to do with you. Why do you persist?" Kevin looked at the young dragon. He thought about how to answer. "Because I've seen this before, Draen. Not with your species but with others. I've watched intelligent, proud species die out because they were too stubborn to adapt. Too attached to old ways that no longer worked. And you think you can save us?" There was no mockery in Draen's voice. Just genuine curiosity. "I think you can save yourselves. You just need better information. Better tools. And maybe someone stubborn enough to keep showing you that there are options. The elders will never listen. Maybe not today. But what about tomorrow? Or next week? Or when the next hatchlings die?" Kevin stood up and moved closer to Draen. "Your aunt is strong. Proud. She loves her pack. I can see that. But love isn't enough when you're fighting physics. Pride isn't enough when your children are freezing to death. Drayan's scales shivered, though Kevin didn't think it was from cold. What would you do if we let you help? First, I'd want to do a complete survey of your nesting caves. Measure exact temperatures, airflow, humidity. Understand the specific challenges. Then, Kevin pulled up some sketches he'd been working on. I have some ideas. Ways to improve insulation, heat retention, maybe even supplement nutrition for pregnant females and young hatchlings. Nothing that would change who you are. Just giving your young a fair chance. And you do this why? What do humans gain? Kevin smiled sadly. We get to know that we didn't stand by and watch a beautiful species disappear when we could have helped. That's enough. Drayan studied him for a long moment. You're very strange for a human. Most of your kind that come here just want to study us. Take data. Write papers. You actually care. I do. My aunt won't accept your help. I know. She's very stubborn. I noticed. Almost as stubborn as you. Kevin laughed. Almost. Drayan stood up, stretching his wings. I need to return before I'm missed. But I want to see more of your data. The migration records especially. Will you be here tomorrow? I'll be here every day until your aunt physically removes me. She might do that, you know. She's very strong. I'm aware. The young dragon turned to leave, then paused. Kevin? That's your name, right? Yes. Thank you for not leaving. Even when we told you to. Drayan launched himself into the air, his wings catching an updraft. Kevin watched him fly back toward the caves. He packed up his equipment slowly, thinking. One young dragon wasn't enough to change an entire pack's mind. But it was a start. Over the next 2 weeks, Drayan came almost every day. Sometimes for just a few minutes, sometimes for hours. Kevin showed him everything. The climate data, the population projections, the historical records of migration, the thermal readings from the nesting caves, the nutrition analysis of available prey in winter versus summer. Drayan absorbed it all like a sponge. He asked smart questions, made connections Kevin hadn't seen, talked about things he'd observed in the pack that matched the data. The females who lose the most hatchlings, Drayan said one afternoon, they're the ones who hunt the farthest from the caves. They burn more energy staying warm, have less reserve for the eggs. Kevin made a note. That matches the metabolic models. Pregnancy increases caloric needs by about 40%. In extreme cold even more. What if they had supplemental food? During egg-carrying season? It could help. Protein especially. Help the hatchlings develop better insulation before they're born. Drayan's eyes lit up. We could do that. Hunt extra. Store meat in the ice. It preserves perfectly. Would the pack accept that? Changing hunting patterns? Maybe. If we framed it as preparing better for our young. Not as accepting outside help. Drayan paused. I'm learning to think like a politician. Kevin grinned. That's not always a compliment. No. But it might keep hatchlings alive. So I'll do it. On the 16th day, Drayan didn't come alone. 3 other young dragons followed at a distance. They didn't approach, but they watched. Listen. The next day there were 5. Then 8. The young Krythax were hungry for answers. For hope. For something other than watching their siblings die and being told it was just the natural order. But matriarch Selen still watched from her high perch. Silent. Unmoved. Her golden eyes tracked Kevin every day. And every day Kevin came back. Patient. Persistent. Stubborn. Just like the species he was trying to save. The council gathering happened on the first day of breeding season. Kevin knew this because Drayan had told him it was the most important meeting of the year. The time when the pack planned for the next generation. When they discussed resources, territory boundaries, and nesting assignments. Kevin waited outside the great cave as the sun climbed higher. He had been invited, though Drayan admitted the invitation came with a lot of arguing. Half the council didn't want a human present at all. Finally, a young female emerged from the cave entrance. The matriarch will see you now, Dr. Walsh. But speak carefully. Many are not happy you're here. Kevin followed her into the cave system. The passages were wide enough for the massive dragons to move comfortably, which meant Kevin felt tiny walking through them. Ice crystals on the walls caught light from bioluminescent fungi, creating an eerie blue glow. The council chamber was a vast natural cavern. 23 adult Krythax sat in a rough circle. Their combined body heat made the space warmer than outside, though Kevin's breath still fogged in the air. Matriarch Selen sat at the head of the circle, elevated on a natural ice platform. Her golden eyes fixed on Kevin as he entered. The human observer has requested to address the council. Selen's voice filled the chamber. Though I question the wisdom of this, Drayan has vouched for him. We will hear what he has to say. Kevin stepped into the center of the circle. 23 pairs of eyes watched him. Some curious, some hostile, most just tired. Thank you, matriarch. Honored council members. Kevin activated his data pad, projecting holographic displays that floated in the cold air. I've spent the past month studying your pack, your territory, your survival patterns. I'm here to share what I've found and to offer a proposal. We need no proposals from humans, an older male growled from Kevin's left. We need nothing from outsiders. Korath, let him speak, Selen said sharply. We agreed to hear him. Kevin pulled up the first display. It showed temperature data from the nesting caves. Your primary nesting chamber maintains an average temperature of -42 degrees during winter. Historical data shows that Krythax hatchlings need at least -20 degrees for proper development. This gap is the primary cause of hatchling mortality. We have always nested in these caves, an elderly female said. They are sacred ground, blessed by our ancestors. I'm not suggesting you abandon them, Kevin said quickly. Just modify them temporarily. During the critical first month of a hatchling's life. He changed the display to show cross-sections of the caves. I can install thermal panels here, here, and here. They would raise the temperature in just the nesting areas, not the whole cave system. Your sacred spaces would remain untouched. Artificial heat, Korath spat the words like a curse. You would have us raise weak hatchlings who cannot survive our world. I would have you raise living hatchlings who can grow strong enough to survive your world, Kevin replied. Right now they're dying before they get that chance. The cold kills them before their own thermal regulation develops. It's not about weakness. It's about physics. He pulled up another chart. This shows nutrition data. Pregnant females and nursing mothers need 43% more protein than you're currently getting from winter hunting. The prey animals have migrated to lower elevations where food is more abundant. You stay here so you have less to eat precisely when you need more. You suggest we abandon our territory to follow prey like common scavengers? Another council member demanded. No. I suggest supplementing your diet during critical months. Kevin showed images of protein synthesizers. I can provide nutritional supplements, completely compatible with your biology. Enough to ensure mothers and hatchlings get what they need. The council erupted. Multiple dragons speaking at once. Voices rising in anger, confusion, debate. This is madness. He wants to make us dependent on human technology. Our ancestors never needed such things. Our ancestors had warmer winters and more prey. Selen raised one wing high. The gesture brought immediate silence. Dr. Walsh, your proposal would require us to accept that we cannot survive on our own. That our ways are insufficient. You ask us to abandon our pride. Kevin took a deep breath. With respect, matriarch, I'm asking you to abandon pride in favor of survival. Those aren't the same thing. They are to us. Then let me ask you this. Kevin looked around the circle, meeting as many eyes as he could. What would your ancestors think if they could see you now? Would they praise you for maintaining tradition while your pack dwindled to nothing? Or would they ask why you didn't adapt when adaptation was possible? You know nothing of our ancestors, Korath snarled. Actually, I do. Kevin pulled up historical records. 4,000 years ago, your people migrated seasonally. They went to warmer areas for breeding season. They adapted their territory use based on environmental conditions. They survived because they were flexible, not rigid. Those records are incomplete, the elderly female said. Taken out of context. Maybe. But the population data isn't. Kevin showed the graph he'd shown Drayan weeks ago. This is what happened when you stopped migrating. When you decided permanent territories proved strength. Your numbers dropped by 70% within 5 centuries. Drayan had been sitting quietly at the edge of the circle. Now he stood. Several older dragons looked at him with surprise. Young dragons rarely spoke in council. I've seen Dr. Walsh's data, Drayan said, his voice steady despite his obvious nervousness. All of it. The climate records. The population trends. The nutrition analysis. Everything points to the same conclusion. We're dying because we're too proud to change. Drayan, you overstep, Selen warned. No, Aunt. Someone needs to say this. Drayan walked toward the center of the circle, joining Kevin. I've lost 6 siblings. 6. All of them strong. All of them born healthy. Dead before they saw their first thaw. How many more do we lose before we admit there's a problem? There has always been loss, Korath said. It is the way of nature. This isn't nature. Draen's voice rose. This is stubbornness. Our ancestors would be ashamed of us. They adapted to survive. They changed their patterns when the world changed. They didn't cling to tradition while their children froze to death. The cave went completely silent. Kevin could hear ice shifting in the walls. The breathing of 23 massive dragons. Selen's scales rippled with emotion Kevin couldn't identify. You speak boldly, nephew. Perhaps too boldly. I speak truth. And you know it. Draen turned to face the council directly. Every dragon in this cave has lost someone. A child. A sibling. A mate. We tell ourselves it's natural. That it's the way things are. But Dr. Walsh has shown us it doesn't have to be this way. A younger female spoke up, her voice quiet. What Draen says, it's what many of us think but are afraid to say. I've lost 3 hatchlings. My mate and I may not try again. The pain is too great. I lost my entire clutch last winter, another said. 5 eggs. 5 perfect babies. All dead within days. More voices joined. Dragons sharing losses. Grief. Fear for the future. The council chamber filled with stories of death and the creeping realization that something had to change. Selen listened to it all. Her face remained impassive, but Kevin saw her claws dig into the ice beneath her. Finally, she raised her wing again. Silence returned. Dr. Walsh. Your proposal requires us to accept outside help. To admit we cannot solve this ourselves. This goes against everything we are. I understand that, matriarch. But I am not finished. Selen's voice cut like ice. It also requires us to trust you. To believe you act from genuine concern and not some hidden human agenda. To accept that your technology won't make us dependent or weak. Kevin nodded. I know it's a lot to ask. Selen was quiet for a long moment. Her golden eyes moved across the council. Kevin saw her looking at Korath, who had lost his mate and all their children over the years. At the young female who spoke of losing 3 hatchlings. At Draen, standing defiant in the center of the circle. I have led this pack for 27 years, Selen said slowly. In that time I have watched our numbers fall from 38 to 23. I have presided over the mourning rituals for 63 hatchlings. 63 children who should have lived. She stood, her full height impressive even in the massive cave. I am tired of mourning. I am tired of watching our pack fade. And I am tired of pride that costs us everything while giving us nothing. The council stirred. Surprised murmurs rippled through the group. Therefore I will accept your proposal, Dr. Walsh. But with conditions. Selen's voice hardened. 1 winter. 1 breeding season. You will install your technology. Provide your supplements. We will see if it makes a difference. But if we become dependent on your help, if our young grow weak from artificial comfort, the agreement ends immediately. I understand, Kevin said. And when the trial period ends, you leave. Whether it succeeds or fails, you return to your people and leave us to our fate. We will not become permanent charity cases for humans. Kevin hesitated. That wasn't what he wanted. But it was better than nothing. Agreed. Then we have a bargain. Selen looked around the council. Those who oppose this speak now. Korath stood. I oppose. We should endure as we always have. 3 others stood with him. But the rest remained seated. The council has spoken, Selen said. We will try the humans' way for 1 winter. She turned her full attention to Kevin. Do not make me regret this, Dr. Walsh. I won't, matriarch. I promise. As Kevin left the council chamber, Draen caught up with him outside. You did it? I didn't think she'd actually agree. Neither did I, Kevin admitted. His hands were shaking from adrenaline. Now comes the hard part. Installing the equipment? No. Making sure it works. Because if I fail, Draen, your pack will never accept outside help again. This is the only chance. Draen looked back at the cave. Then we'd better make it count. The thermal panels arrived 3 weeks before breeding season. Kevin stood in the supply depot, looking at the crates of equipment, and felt the weight of what he'd promised. If this didn't work, the Krythax would never trust humans again. Maybe never trust anyone again. Draen helped carry the first load to the nesting caves. Behind him came 5 other young dragons, all volunteers. The older pack members watched from a distance with suspicion clear in their eyes. Where do these go? Draen asked, setting down a crate carefully. Kevin pulled out his installation plans. The main nesting chamber first. We'll mount panels along the upper walls. They'll radiate heat downward without direct contact. The goal is -20 degrees, not tropical warmth. Korath approached as they worked. The old male's face showed deep disapproval. Unnatural. You're creating a false environment. Hatchlings born in this artificial warmth will be weak. They'll be alive, Kevin replied, drilling a mounting bracket into the ice wall. We can work on strong after we achieve alive. Your human arrogance knows no bounds. Kevin paused his work and turned to face Korath directly. You're right. I am arrogant. I'm arrogant enough to think dead babies are a problem worth solving. I'm arrogant enough to believe your species deserves a future. If that offends you, I apologize. But I'm not stopping. Korath's scales rippled with anger. For a moment, Kevin thought the dragon might physically remove him. But Drayan stepped between them. Elder Korath, Dr. Walsh works at the matriarch's command. If you have objections, take them to her. Korath snorted ice crystals from his nostrils but walked away. It took 2 weeks to install all the thermal panels. Kevin worked 12-hour days in the freezing caves, his fingers going numb despite insulated gloves. The young dragons helped, learning how the technology worked, asking endless questions. The nutrition supplements were easier. Kevin had synthesized them based on Krythak's biology. High-protein blocks that dissolved in the mouth, providing concentrated calories and essential minerals. He showed the pregnant females how to use them. 1 block per day during egg carrying, Kevin explained to a female named Syra. 2 per day after the hatchlings emerge. It'll help you maintain body heat while nursing. Syra sniffed the block suspiciously. It smells strange. I added mineral salts from your native prey animals. The base is synthetic but the nutritional profile matches what you'd get from hunting, just more concentrated. She took a small bite. Her eyes widened slightly. It's not terrible. High praise, Kevin grinned. The first eggs were laid in the 3rd week. 5 females produced a total of 9 eggs. The entire pack gathered for the traditional blessing ceremony. Kevin watched from the cave entrance, not wanting to intrude on something sacred. Selen noticed him and gestured him forward with her wing. You are part of this now, human. Whether we like it or not. Come witness what you've promised to save. Kevin approached the nesting chamber. The eggs rested on beds of soft moss and fur, each one carefully tended by its parents. They were beautiful, pearlescent shells that seemed to glow with inner light. They're incredible, Kevin whispered. They're hope, Selen said quietly. Hope that we may not be the generation that fails. Do not make us regret placing that hope in you. The eggs hatched 6 weeks later. 9 healthy hatchlings emerged over a 3-day period. Kevin monitored the nesting chamber constantly, checking temperatures, adjusting the thermal panels, making sure everything stayed in the target range. The hatchlings were tiny, barely the size of Kevin's torso. Their scales were pale, almost translucent. They made small chirping sounds that echoed through the caves. And they were warm. Not freezing. Not struggling. Just warm and active and hungry. The temperature is holding at -19 degrees, Kevin reported to Selen. Exactly where we need it. They seem more vigorous than previous clutches, Selen observed. She watched her daughter's hatchling crawl across the nesting moss with surprising energy. That's the proper development. When they're not using all their energy just to stay alive, they can use it for growth instead. The first month went smoothly. The hatchlings grew visibly stronger each day. Their scales darkened to proper blue. Their chirps became deeper, more resonant. They started practicing flapping their tiny wings. Then the storm hit. Kevin was in his research station when his weather monitoring system started screaming alerts. He pulled up the satellite data and felt his stomach drop. Oh no. No. A massive ice storm was bearing down on the region. Wind speeds projected at over 200 kilometers per hour. Temperature drop of 40 degrees. Duration, 3 to 4 days minimum. Kevin ran for the caves. The wind was already picking up, pushing against him like a physical barrier. Ice crystals stung any exposed skin. He found Selen organizing the pack. Matriarch. The storm. We know. We can feel it coming. Selen's voice was tense. The pack is moving to the deep caves. The inner chambers where the wind cannot reach. What about the hatchlings? The thermal panels run on external solar collectors. If they get buried in ice, then we endure as we always have. But Kevin heard the fear beneath her words. My research station has independent power. Geothermal generators. It can maintain heat even in the storm. Kevin made a decision. Bring the pack there. All of you. There's enough room. You would shelter us? The entire pack. Yes. Bring everyone. Especially the hatchlings and nursing mothers. Selen's eyes narrowed. If this is a trap. It's not a trap. It's a heated building in a storm. That's all. Kevin was already running back toward his station. I'll prepare the space. Get everyone there within the hour. The research station had never been designed to house 23 dragons and 9 hatchlings. Kevin frantically moved equipment, opened all the interior spaces, cranked the heating to maximum. His hands shook as he worked. The Krythax began arriving as the storm intensified. First the mothers carrying hatchlings in their claws. Then the younger dragons. Finally the elders, including a very reluctant Korath. They barely fit. Dragons pressed against walls, curled around each other, wings folded tight. The hatchlings were placed in the warmest corner, surrounded by protective adults. Then the storm truly hit. The wind screamed like a living thing. Ice hammered against the station's walls. The temperature outside plummeted to -93 degrees. Kevin watched the external sensors until the ice buildup made them unreadable. Inside, the Krythax huddled together. Their combined body heat actually helped warm the station. But the hatchlings needed monitoring. Constant monitoring. Kevin moved among them with his medical scanner, checking vital signs, adjusting heat distribution, making sure everyone stayed stable. Hours blurred together. Day became day again with no visible difference outside the howling white chaos. On the second day, Syra's hatchling started showing distress. Its temperature was dropping despite the warm environment. Its breathing became labored. Something's wrong, Syra's voice cracked with panic. Please, human. Help my child. Kevin ran a full diagnostic scan. His heart sank. Respiratory infection. The stress of the move, probably. Its immune system is still developing. Can you fix it? I can try. Kevin pulled out his medical kit. He'd brought basic veterinary supplies, adapted for Krythax biology. Antibiotics. Anti-inflammatories. Respiratory support. He'd never treated a Krythax hatchling before. Never tested these medications on one so young. But doing nothing meant watching it die. I need to give it medicine. Might help. Might not. But it's the only chance. Do it, Syra said immediately. Please. Kevin administered the treatment. Then he set up a small oxygen enrichment field around the hatchling. Monitored its temperature. Adjusted medications based on response. Stayed by its side as hours crawled past. Selen watched from across the room. Watched Kevin work without stopping. Without sleeping. His eyes grew red and sunken. His hands developed tremors from exhaustion. But he didn't leave the hatchling's side. The storm continued into a third day. Kevin had been awake for 72 hours. His vision blurred. His reactions slowed. But the hatchling needed constant monitoring. Every hour brought new challenges. Temperature spikes. Breathing difficulties. Feeding problems. Drain brought Kevin food that he barely touched. You need to rest. Can't. If I sleep, I might miss something. Might miss the moment it needs help. You're going to collapse. Then I collapse. But not yet. Kevin adjusted the oxygen flow again. The hatchling's breathing had improved slightly. Maybe. He couldn't tell anymore if he was seeing real improvement or just hoping for it. On the third night, the hatchling's fever broke. Its breathing steadied. Color returned to its pale scales. Syra pressed her snout gently against Kevin's shoulder. You saved my baby. Kevin slumped against the wall, too exhausted to stand anymore. Maybe. Still needs monitoring. Could relapse. But it didn't relapse. By the fourth morning, when the storm finally began to ease, the hatchling was chirping and trying to crawl around. Weak but alive. Definitely alive. The pack emerged from the research station into a transformed landscape. Ice had reshaped everything. The caves had 3 meters of new ice blocking some entrances. The thermal panels were completely buried. But they were all alive. Every dragon. Every hatchling. All 23 adults and 9 babies had survived the worst storm in 15 years. Kevin spent the next week digging out and repairing the thermal panels. The pack helped, no longer skeptical. Even Korath worked alongside him without complaint. Winter continued. More challenges came. Cold snaps. Food shortages. Minor illnesses. But Kevin and the pack faced each one together. The hatchlings grew stronger week by week. Spring arrived suddenly as it always did in the frozen wastes. The sun climbed higher. Temperatures rose above freezing during daylight hours. Ice began its slow melt. Selen called the pack together in the main cave. Kevin stood to the side, nervous. This was the moment. the judgment of whether his work had succeeded or failed. This winter, Selin began, her voice carrying through the chamber, we have seen something unprecedented. Something I did not think possible. She paused, looking at each of the 9 hatchlings. They were nearly a quarter the size of their parents now, healthy and energetic and very much alive. For the first time in 12 cycles, every hatchling survived winter. Every single one. Selin's voice wavered slightly. 9 eggs. 9 babies. 9 survivors. The pack hummed together, a sound of joy and relief and disbelief all mixed together. Selin turned to Kevin. You did what you promised, human. Against my expectations. Against my doubts. You gave our children a chance. Kevin felt tears freezing on his cheeks. They gave themselves a chance. I just helped a little. You helped a lot, Drayan said, walking over to stand beside Kevin. You gave us our future back. The council chamber felt different this time. Kevin noticed it immediately as he entered. The dragons sat in the same circle, but their postures had changed. Less rigid. Less defensive. They looked at him without the hostility that had filled the room months ago. Selin stood at her usual place on the ice platform. But today she had asked Kevin to stand beside her rather than in the center of the circle. A position of honor, Drayan had explained. A position reserved for pack members. We gather on the first day of the thaw season, Selin began, her voice formal and ceremonial. A time of renewal. A time of reflection. A time to acknowledge what has passed and plan for what comes next. The pack hummed in acknowledgement, the traditional response to a council opening. This winter was different, Selin continued. You all know this. You all lived it. For the first time in 12 cycles, we celebrate the thaw with no morning rituals. No small bodies return to the eternal ice. No parents broken by loss. Kevin watched the dragons around the circle. He saw Syra with her hatchling curled against her side, both healthy and strong. Saw other parents with their surviving young. Saw hope in faces that had known only grief for so long. I called this council to make a formal acknowledgement, Selin said. One that shames me to speak but must be said. She paused, and Kevin saw how difficult this was for the proud matriarch. We were dying. Our pride was killing us, and we were too stubborn to see it. Korath shifted uncomfortably. Several other elders looked down at their claws. Dr. Kevin Walsh came to us with offers of help. We refused. He came again. We refused again. He persisted when any sensible being would have abandoned us to our fate. Selin turned to look directly at Kevin. He saw value in us when we had stopped seeing value in ourselves. Kevin felt his throat tighten. Matriarch, let me finish, human. I have more to say. Selin's golden eyes were bright with emotion. You did not just save 9 hatchlings this winter. You saved our future. Our hope. Our willingness to imagine that the Krythax might endure beyond our generation. She looked back at the council. And now we must decide. Do we return to the old ways when Dr. Walsh leaves? Do we remove the thermal panels, stop the nutrition supplements, and hope for the best? Or do we acknowledge that adaptation is not weakness? The cave fell silent. Kevin held his breath. Drayan stood. If I may speak, matriarch? Selin nodded. You have earned the right to address this council, nephew. Speak. Drayan walked to the center of the circle. He looked more confident than he had months ago. More mature. I've been studying Dr. Walsh's historical data. The records of our ancestors. And I've been thinking about what it means to be Krythax. He pulled out data pads, distributing them to council members. Kevin recognized them as copies he'd made of the migration records. 4,000 years ago, our people moved with the seasons. They spent harsh winters in thermal valleys. Raised their young in warmth. Then returned to the high ice when the young were strong enough. They did this for thousands of years. We know this, Korath interrupted. Ancient history. Irrelevant to our current situation. Is it? Drayan challenged. Because I think our ancestors understood something we forgot. Being Krythax isn't about suffering unnecessarily. It's about being smart enough to survive so we can pass our strength to the next generation. He gestured to the hatchlings sleeping in the corner. Those 9 babies are stronger than any hatchlings born in the past decade. What? Because they had what they needed to develop properly. Food. Warmth. Medicine when they got sick. They didn't waste energy just trying to survive. They used that energy to grow. A younger female spoke up. Drayan's right. My hatchling is twice the size of my sister's baby from 3 years ago. More active. Better developed. This isn't weakness. This is what healthy looks like. But we achieved it with human technology, Korath argued. We cannot maintain this without Dr. Walsh. We'll become dependent. We don't have to, Drayan said. Dr. Walsh taught me how the thermal panels work. How to maintain them. How to repair them. He's been teaching several of us. The technology isn't mysterious. It's just engineering. Kevin nodded. I've been training anyone who wanted to learn. Drayan, Syra, 5 others. They understand the systems now. You don't need me. And the nutrition supplements? An elder asked. I can show you how to synthesize them from local materials, Kevin replied. Or you could do what Drayan suggested months ago. Hunt extra during abundant seasons. Store meat in the ice. Use your natural advantages. Drayan continued. I propose we take the best of both approaches. Use Dr. Walsh's technology for the hatchlings' critical first months. But also resume partial migration. Not abandoning our territory but using it wisely. He pulled up maps on the data pads. These thermal valleys are only 3 days' flight from here. We could move pregnant females and new mothers there for the coldest months. The rest of the pack maintains our territory. When the young are strong enough, everyone returns. That's still migration, Korath said. Still admitting we cannot endure. No, Selen spoke, her voice cutting through the discussion. It's admitting we're smart enough to adapt. That we value our children more than our pride. She stood, walking down from her platform. She moved to the center of the circle, standing beside Drayan. I have led this pack through 12 years of decline. 12 years of watching our numbers fall. 12 years of mourning rituals that tore my heart apart. Her voice grew stronger. I will not lead us through 12 more. Drayan's proposal is sound. We combine our traditional knowledge with new tools. We migrate seasonally while maintaining our core territory. We learn from Dr. Walsh while remaining Krythax. And if it makes us soft? Korath pressed. If our young grow up unable to handle true hardship? Selen turned to face him directly. Korath, you lost your mate and all 7 of your children over the years. Were they soft? Were they weak? The old male's scales rippled with pain. No. They were strong. The strongest. Then their deaths proved nothing except that strength isn't enough when you're fighting impossible conditions. Selen's voice softened. Your children deserve to live. All 63 hatchlings we lost over the past 12 years deserve to live. Not because they were weak but because we were too proud to adapt. Korath was silent for a long moment. Finally he bowed his head. You speak truth, matriarch. Hard truth but truth nonetheless. Selen looked around the circle. We will vote. Those in favor of Drayan's proposal of combining old ways with new tools, of seasonal migration and maintain technology indicate now. One by one, every dragon in the council raised a wing. Even Korath, though his movements were slow and reluctant. The council has spoken unanimously, Selen declared. We adapt. We endure. We survive. As Krythax have always done, just with wisdom instead of stubbornness. She turned to Kevin. This brings me to my final announcement. Dr. Kevin Walsh, you came to us as an observer. An outsider. Someone we viewed with suspicion and rejected repeatedly. Kevin felt suddenly nervous. But you proved yourself through persistence, through genuine care for our well-being, and through actions that saved our pack from extinction. Selen's voice took on a ceremonial tone. Therefore, by the authority granted to me as matriarch, and with the unanimous consent of this council, I formally grant you the title of pack friend. The council chamber erupted in the humming sound, but louder than Kevin had ever heard it. It resonated through the ice, through his bones, through his entire being. Pack friend is not given lightly, Selen continued. The last outsider to receive this honor was a traitor from the coastal clans 3,000 years ago. It means you are not Krythax by birth, but you are Krythax by choice and by deed. You are family. Kevin's vision blurred. He hadn't expected this. Hadn't imagined it was possible. Drayan approached and gently touched his snout to Kevin's shoulder. Welcome to the pack, friend. One by one the other dragons came forward. Each touched him with their snout, the traditional gesture of pack acceptance. Even Korath, though the old male grumbled, Don't let it go to your head, human. When the ceremony finished, Selen spoke privately with Kevin. You agreed to leave when the winter trial ended. I release you from that promise. You may stay as long as you wish. Or leave knowing you are always welcome to return. Kevin struggled to find words. I need to report to my supervisors. File my research. But I'd like to come back. If that's acceptable. It is more than acceptable. It is hoped for. Selen's expression softened. You gave us more than thermal panels and medicine, Kevin Walsh. You gave us permission to change, to grow, to imagine a future beyond slow extinction. She gestured to where the hatchlings were waking up, stretching their wings, chirping for food. Look at them. Really look. That's not just 9 babies. That's hope. That's proof that we can endure if we're willing to adapt. You taught us that. You taught yourselves, Kevin replied. I just provided some tools. Never underestimate the value of the right tools at the right time. Selen looked out toward the cave entrance where the sun was melting the ice. We have work ahead. Learning to migrate again. Teaching the young ones. Modifying our traditions to fit our new reality. But for the first time in years, I believe we'll actually have young ones to teach. Kevin smiled. You will. I'm certain of it. That evening, as the sun set over the frozen wastes, Kevin stood outside the caves with Drayan. The young dragon had become a true friend over the months. So, pack friend, Drayan said with amusement in his voice. How does it feel to be part of a dragon pack? Surreal. Wonderful. Terrifying. Kevin laughed. I came here to observe an interesting species. I'm leaving as family. You're not leaving yet, Drayan pointed out. You said you'd come back. I will. I promise. Good. Because we need you to teach us more. Not just about technology. About how to think differently. How to question traditions when they no longer serve us. Kevin looked at the young dragon. You already know how to do that, Drayan. You proved it when you stood up in council. When you challenged the elders. When you chose survival over pride. I learned that from watching you. Then we taught each other. Kevin smiled. That's how the best partnerships work. The two stood together as stars emerged in the darkening sky, watching the ice reflect the last light of day. In the caves behind them, 9 hatchlings chirped and played, alive and thriving. The Krythax had a future again. And Kevin had a family in the most unexpected place. 2 years passed like a dream. Kevin stood on the same ice ridge where he'd first spoken to Matriarch Selen. But everything looked different now. The frozen wastes hadn't changed, but the pack living in them had transformed completely. Below, in the valleys near the caves, 47 Krythax moved about their daily activities. 47. The pack had nearly doubled in size. And the most beautiful part was the sound echoing across the ice, the chirping and calling of 23 hatchlings and juveniles. 23 young dragons who were alive because their pack had chosen to adapt. Kevin's communicator buzzed. A message from the Xenobiology Council. His new assignment was confirmed. A distant world with a species facing environmental challenges. They wanted him to apply what he'd learned here. He was leaving in 3 days. The sound of wings made him turn. Drayan landed beside him, much larger now than when they'd first met. The young dragon had grown into a powerful adult, his silver-edged scales gleaming in the sunlight. Watching the chaos? Drayan asked, gesturing toward where the young dragons were playing a rough game that involved lots of tumbling and wing flapping. Enjoying the chaos, Kevin corrected. 2 years ago this seemed impossible. 2 years ago it was impossible. We were dying and too proud to save ourselves. Drayan settled onto the ice. Now look at us. 3 successful breeding seasons. Not a single hatchling lost. Other packs are coming to learn from us. That was true. Kevin had watched delegations from 5 other Krythax packs visit over the past year. All of them facing the same problems Selen's pack had faced. All of them desperate but too proud to ask for help directly. The coastal pack is implementing the thermal panels next month, Kevin said. And the mountain pack has started seasonal migration again. Because you showed them it wasn't weakness. That survival requires intelligence, not just endurance. Drayan paused. They're going to miss you when you leave. We all will. Kevin felt the weight of that. I'll miss you too. But you don't need me anymore. You've got everything running smoothly. 7 dragons fully trained in the technology. The migration patterns re-established. Food storage systems working perfectly. It's not about need, Drayan said quietly. You're family now. Family isn't about need. It's about wanting them around. Before Kevin could respond, a young hatchling came bounding up the ridge. She was one of the season's babies, barely 3 months old. Her name was Nova, one of the first Krythax hatchlings given a human-style name. Kevin. Nova's high-pitched voice was excited. Watch me glide. I can go really far now. She spread her small wings and launched herself off a lower ledge. Her glide was wobbly and she landed in a snowbank, but she emerged triumphant and covered in snow. That was amazing. Kevin called down. At least 10 meters. 12. Nova insisted. I counted. Drayan chuckled. She adores you. They all do. The young ones think you're some kind of magical creature who appeared to save the pack. I'm just a scientist who couldn't walk away. Exactly. A magical creature. That evening, Selen called a gathering. The entire pack assembled in the main cave, now expanded to accommodate their larger numbers. Kevin noticed the walls had been decorated with ice carvings, a Krythax art form he'd learned about over the years. Pack friend Kevin Walsh has an announcement, Selen began. I've asked him to share it with all of us. Kevin stepped forward, his heart heavy. I've received a new assignment from the Xenobiology Council. There's another species on another world facing environmental challenges. They've asked me to help them the way I helped you. The cave filled with murmurs. The hatchlings looked confused. The adults looked sad. I leave in 3 days, Kevin continued. But I want you to know that this pack, this family will always be part of me. You changed my life as much as I changed yours. A juvenile named Storm spoke up. But you'll come back, right? You have to come back. I'll visit when I can, Kevin promised. And we can stay in contact through long-range communications. It's not the same, Storm said, and several other young dragons hummed in agreement. Selen raised her wing for silence. Kevin leaves to do for others what he did for us. We should celebrate this, not mourn it. He will carry our story to the stars. Show others that adaptation and survival go together. She stepped down from her platform and approached Kevin. But before you go, I have something for you. We have something for you. She turned slightly, presenting her left wing. Kevin saw that one of her larger scales, near the wing joint, had been marked with ceremonial paint. In Krythax tradition, when a pack member leaves on a long journey, they carry a piece of the pack with them. Selen's voice was thick with emotion. This is a scale from my own wing. It represents the pack's heart. Our gratitude. Our love. She flexed her wing, and Kevin saw that the scale had already been loosened. With a careful movement, she detached it and held it out to him in her claw. The scale was the size of Kevin's hand, deep blue with veins of gold running through it. It gleamed in the cave light like a precious gem. I can't take this, Kevin whispered. Matriarch, this is too much. You refused to let us fade when we had accepted the darkness, Selen said firmly. When we had given up hope and called it dignity. You were stubborn and annoying and persistent. You saved us from ourselves. She pressed the scale into Kevin's hands. Carry this. Remember us. And know that wherever you go, you are Krythax. You are pack. Kevin's vision blurred with tears. He held the scale carefully, feeling its warmth, its weight. Thank you. I'll treasure this always. Drain came forward next. We have one more tradition to perform. The flight of celebration. We usually do it for successful hunts or victories in territorial disputes. But we've never done one for a departing pack member. Because pack members don't usually leave, an elder explained. We're born here, we live here, we die here. But you came from the stars, so you must return to them. So we adapt our traditions as you taught us. The pack moved outside. The sun was setting, painting the ice in shades of orange and pink. The adult dragons formed a circle on the ground. The juveniles and hatchlings gathered in the center with Kevin. Selen began a deep, resonant hum. One by one the other adults joined. The sound built and built until Kevin felt it vibrating through his entire body. Then they launched. All 47 dragons took to the air in perfect synchronization. They flew in a complex pattern above Kevin, their wings creating a living mandala against the sunset sky. The juveniles flew in the inner rings, still learning. The adults flew the outer patterns, strong and graceful. They sang as they flew. A Krythax song that Kevin had never heard before. Draen later told him it was the song of gratitude, usually reserved for honoring the dead. But they'd changed the words. Made it about life instead of death. About hope instead of loss. The flight lasted until the stars came out. When the dragons finally landed, Nova and Storm and the other young ones crowded around Kevin. I made you something, Nova said shyly. She held out a small carving made of ice. It showed a human figure standing beside a dragon. So you remember us. I made one too. Storm added, showing a similar carving. Soon Kevin's arms were full of small gifts. Ice carvings. Preserved scales from hatchlings. Drawings made by dragging claws through ice. Each one precious. Each one a piece of a young dragon's heart. I could never forget you, Kevin said, his voice breaking. Any of you. You're my family. The final day came too quickly. Kevin's transport ship arrived at dawn, landing on the ice plains. He'd packed his equipment, his research data, his samples. And carefully wrapped in insulated cloth, Selen's scale and all the gifts from the young ones. The entire pack came to see him off. Even the smallest hatchlings carried by their parents. Selen spoke formally, her voice carrying across the ice. Kevin Walsh, pack friend, you came to us as a stranger. You leave as family. May the ice guide your path. May the stars light your way. May you always find your way home. To the pack, the dragons responded in unison, the traditional farewell. Kevin turned to address them one last time. You've given me so much more than I ever gave you. You taught me that stubbornness in the service of life is not a flaw, it's a virtue. That families can form across any boundary. That adaptation is the truest form of strength. He looked at Dran. Keep learning. Keep questioning. Keep making your ancestors proud by choosing survival over pride. He looked at Selen. Thank you for taking a chance on an annoying human who wouldn't leave you alone. He looked at all the young dragons, at Nova and Storm and the others. Grow strong. Fly far. Live the lives your older siblings never got to live. Make every day count. The hatchlings rushed forward, mobbing Kevin in a mass of scales and wings and chirping voices. He hugged as many as he could reach, memorizing the feel of their scales, the sound of their voices. Finally he had to go. He walked toward the transport ship, turning back every few steps to wave. The pack began to hum. The same deep, resonant sound from the flight of celebration. It followed Kevin all the way to the ship, wrapped around him like a blanket. As the transport lifted off, Kevin looked down at the frozen wastes. At the caves where 47 dragons lived. At the ice where once only morning rituals had been performed, but now young dragons played and learned and grew. He pressed his hand against the window, holding Selen's scale in the other. Thank you, he whispered, for letting me be part of your story. The ship climbed higher and the pack became small dots on the ice. But Kevin could still hear them humming. Could still feel the connection. He opened his data pad and began his report to the Xenobiology Council. But he didn't start with scientific observations or climate data. He started with a story. 2 years ago, I met a pack of dragons who had forgotten how to hope. They'd accepted extinction with dignity, believing that pride was worth more than survival. This is the story of how they remembered that the strongest thing a species can do is adapt. And how they taught a stubborn human that family isn't defined by biology, but by who you choose to save and who chooses to save you in return. Below, on the ice, the Krythax pack watched the ship disappear into the sky. The young dragons asked when Kevin would return. The adults promised he would, someday. And in the nesting caves, new eggs rested in their thermal-controlled chambers. The next generation. The future that once seemed impossible. The Krythax had survived. They had adapted. They had thrived. And they would never forget the human who refused to let them fade into darkness.